G'day everyone, it's Chris, and look who I've got here. It is Mr. Sam Evans, aka the Electric Viking. Welcome, Sam.
Hey mate, how you going? Good to see you.
You too, and I hope Shanna as well. How's she doing?
Yeah, the last PET scan, the results were not great, so it's gotten a bit worse.
Not good.
She's going in doing a special therapy next week, which is outside of the normal government medical system, where they think it might be won't cure her, but it could potentially really help her. So that'll be fingers crossed to see for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, all the best for that, and our thoughts with you. And I'll leave a link down below to her GoFundMe page.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
And yeah, if you can all help out, that'd be appreciated. And look, the reason I'm talking today with Sam is that I saw a rather disappointing story that made out the electric vehicles from China in particular to be not the clean green cars that they are. In fact, it frequently kept on using the term the dirty EV problem and how dirty electric vehicles are, and they're not green, they're not clean. And in it, especially towards the end, I felt that they unfairly focused on you, Sam. And just because there was an interview with the Minister Chris Bowen.
Oh, we should be careful not to say an interview, because they're calling it an interview.
Yeah, right. True.
It's actually just a media, basically a media conference where there was 35 different media, possibly 30, around that. So all of us were meant to be able to ask questions, but he didn't really allow that. He took over.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't there for that bit. I did attend that event. I was there on the Saturday, I think it was, but I could tell basically that his line of questioning was trying to draw anyone in who could with this narrative around how nickel that comes out of Indonesia from this company goes to China and ends up in our electric vehicles in Australia. And as we're about to talk about it, it turns out everything about the story is a complete lie. And it's very disappointing. So Sam, just talk us through the actual day then. What actually happened at press event?
Mate, do you mind if just for my channel viewers, you talk about a bit about who you are, and then we can get into that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it'd be good for them to know what you've done and how you've actually taken on the entire government as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So my name's Chris. Hi, Electric Chris. If you look for me on YouTube,
we'll put a link to Electric Chris. Go and subscribe to him.
Thank you very much, Sam. Appreciate it. And look, I cover things electric from an Aussie perspective, and I've been doing that for the last 6 years at least now. And I, like Sam, are very passionate about transitioning the world to cleaner and greener forms of transportation. And by doing so, we can actually improve the air that we breathe, so that the coal and the petroleum products and the fossil fuel things that go into making cars at the moment that burn petrol and diesel don't get into the environment. And there is actually absolutely scientifically proven data supporting this. And I feel so passionate about it that we haven't had a petrol car now for over 4 years. We have 2 electric cars. We are very fortunate to be in that position. And I was very much annoyed and incensed by the Victorian government back in 2021 when they introduced the world's first electric vehicle tax that penalised people for actually doing the right thing and for going electric. And what that meant was a charge for every kilometre you drove your car, and it was akin to an alcohol tax or a petroleum tax or whatever you want to call it. And so we argued in the High Court of Australia successfully. We got the decision overturned after about 1.5 years. That it was an excise, and it essentially what the High Court said was it turned all roads in Australia into toll roads. So it didn't matter if I drove my car and the money that I paid back to the Victorian government through this EV tax. If I drove to Northern Territory and back, all that money went back into the Victorian coffers, supposedly to pay for roads. Now, if you look into it, the council actually builds the majority of our roads, 90% of our roads. So if you pay council taxes, your rates, you pay for roads. If you pay taxes, you pay for roads. The whole idea that people who pay for fuel are the only people who pay for roads is actually a complete lie. Complete lie. And if anything, it's actually designed by the fossil fuel industry to, enshrine people, indoctrinate people with the idea that you must use petrol to keep your roads. It's like, no, you don't. We actually give more than $22 billion through either tax breaks, actual subsidies, actual Australian money to these guys to keep cars going. I looked at the numbers this year because I updated them. I did a story on this a few years ago. It turns out every Australian, a kid who's born today, a baby born today, contributes more than $600 each to the fossil fuel industry. So to say that buying petrol keeps cars on the road because it builds roads is an absolute misnomer. Anyway, thankfully, myself and Kath, as plaintiffs in this court decision against the Victorian government,
sorry to interrupt you, Chris, but just the two of you took on the Australian government yourselves in the media all over Australia. I was like, this is insane that two people are taking on the entire Victorian government.
Yeah. I mean, it was actually, like common expression we use was, it put the brakes on the uptake of electric vehicles. It was a real disincentive.
Yeah.
We already are fighting this battle with the Australian media. And can I just say straight away right now, I was going to save it for later, but I want to say it now. We know full well that Channel 7, Kerry Stokes, and 7 Holdings has fossil fuel ties. Yeah. They're both direct.
Massive.
They are direct and indirect. And the actual the reporter on that story, Liam, what's his last name? Sam, Liam Bartlett. He too has actually worked for Shell in 2012 to 2015 as a consultant. Sure, doing media for them, but if you're doing media for Shell, do you think you're actually doing clean green stories?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
there's been numerous articles talking about what you just said.
Yeah.
Twiggy Forrest, he owns a mining company, one of the big Fortescue. Even he says that Kerry Stokes and Channel 7 are basically in the pocket of fossil fuels. Publicly. He's saying this stuff publicly. So they have this ongoing public battle where he's saying, okay, you're fighting against renewables. So I think if he's saying it, it's probably happening.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I looked into it, and they've actually got direct stakes in oil and gas production through Beach Energy, SGH Energy, and also very strong ties through West Track. And those guys actually provide mining and resource industry with like big trucks and things like that. And that's why that whole thing about that. I looked up. I had to look up. Sam, can I tell you how disappointed I was when I had to look into this damn story because I was very annoyed by it. When I looked up things about electric vehicles and nickel and what they call it, the dirty problem, can I just tell you, I found a lot of videos by Channel 7 Media over the last 2 years about electric vehicles. What does that tell you?
Negative stories.
Negative stories.
Yeah.
Negative stories. They're not clean. They're not green. I'll do a screenshot. It is hilarious that this is what we're being fed. Well, rather, this is what the Australian people are being fed.
Yeah.
And to date, the video, and unfortunately, I've been one of those people today who's watched that damn video by Channel 7, has had 172,000 views. So 172,000 people who maybe haven't done even like 1 hour of research. That's all it took me today. And I've watched your video, Sam, so thank you for your video, your rebuttal video. It only took an hour and a half of my time to realize that the story was a complete fabrication. It was a stitch up. It was insane. Like, anyway. So take me back, Sam. So you were there, and
I actually turned up to this press conference a little bit late. I didn't even know what was happening. To be honest, I'm going to embarrass myself by saying that. But then I realized that it was the minister talking about vehicle to grid or vehicle to home, V2X, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
To me, that is revolutionary because it will enable, they're saying, CSIRO says that by 2035, there'll be 8 million electric cars on the roads in Australia. Meaning those people can, on the weekends or during the day, I mean, you obviously most people have 2 cars. One of them's often at home. That car can be, you can use all that extra solar during the day. 4 million households in Australia can use all that extra solar. Then at night time, they can use their batteries for a couple of hours between, say, 5 and 10 p.m. when electricity is expensive, and potentially have to pay zero on their bills, and also massively reduce the burden on Australia's electricity grid, which is a massive problem because our coal power plants keep breaking down and we want to replace those. By the way, I should mention the biggest coal power plant in Australia, which is not far from me, is meant to have been closed down. And we're meant to be building the biggest battery in Australia on that location. So that's the kind of thing we want to, encourage. Anyway, there's all these journalists there, probably about 30 of them. And Liam starts, I wouldn't say asking questions, it was more making accusations. And it was, for me, I honestly wasn't following what he was saying, because it was something entirely different to what the media conference was meant to be about. Now, he's framed it as a personal interview, which is extremely arrogant, because that's him assuming that no one else there was relevant. He's the only journalist there that mattered. And pretty much that's the way he acted. He just kept peppering the minister with questions, which meant that no one else could ask a question. I was trying to ask a question, wasn't possible. So then the minister got annoyed, as you can see, and he just stormed off. Now, people are saying the minister should have answered his questions, but I think the minister probably didn't even know the answer. He probably didn't know about the story, wouldn't have had time to research it and find out. But that said, I don't really understand why Chris Bowen or any part of the Australian government has any responsibility for things happening in nickel mines in Indonesia. I mean, we don't want that to happen, because we want to support our own nickel mines here in Australia, which have to compete with them. So to blame our government for something happening in Indonesia, I just think it's totally bizarre. And that's what he was doing, just simply to create a clickbait story in order to frame this whole EVs are bad, blah, blah, blah. Now, of course, as you mentioned, most nickel goes into steel, and he obviously wasn't interested in that part of the story. Anyhow, minister storms off, and I ran up to him to try and ask him my question, which Spotlight framed as me being his security or something bizarre like that. The interesting thing is his security guard actually pushed me away. So this idea that I was protecting him, obviously Channel 7 removed that part of otherwise it wouldn't have suited their narrative. They removed the part of the security guard pushing away. But the security guard, fortunately, didn't push me away until I'd asked my question. Chris Bowen, very frustrated voice, responded to me. And if anyone wants to know if this is true, you can send him in a question. I'm pretty sure he's going to confirm what I'm saying. He's responded to my question, and then he kept walking, and right then one of his security guards pushed me away. I've gone, okay, he's answered my question. I can see why he's frustrated, and I've started walking back to the stage. So you and I have been on the stage doing some presentations, started walking back to the stage, and I should mention, I forgot to say, when Liam was peppering the minister with questions and the minister went to storm off, he turned and looked at me, and I had no idea who this guy was. I don't watch mainstream media. And he said something along the lines of, "You made him leave, you dickhead," or something like that. And I'm thinking, what? I didn't even get a single word in. I wasn't able to ask a single question. So obviously the minister doesn't know who I am. I have no responsibility for the minister or ending the press conference. Nothing to do with me. If anyone wants to know if that's true, even the show organizers, Ray, contact them, ask them if that's true, and they'll tell you exactly what I said. Anyhow, this all finishes. Then I start walking back to the stage. Liam chases after me, and he straight away stabs his finger into my chest, and I think that he's worked out that that's any legal way of assaulting someone and actually physically hurting them by stabbing the finger between your ribs. But it doesn't look like he's being super aggressive. And he has this, it's sort of like a trick that apparently I've been told now he uses quite often to get people to react to him and to give them a story. So after about 20 seconds of this guy being right up in close to my face, I've reacted and done the same thing back to him, which was, I should have realized what was happening, but I had no idea who he was. And obviously I didn't even know the cameras were filming, to be honest. And then I said, I just got sick of it after about maybe a minute of him going off at me. And I said, well, let's just go outside and sort this out, you dickhead.
No.
He's right in my face, I'm thinking, what the hell is this about? And it just made, to me, I couldn't understand what he was on about. So he was saying to me over and over, who the hell do you think you are? And he was basically saying, they edited this part out, of course. He was saying that I was a nobody, and I just said nothing. I said absolutely nothing to that. I was sort of thinking to myself, mate, you're at an EV show. I don't think anyone here cares or knows who you are. That's what I was thinking. Anyhow, I drove home that night and I called my wife and I said, you wouldn't believe what happened today. The most angry dude has just come up to me and just had this meltdown. And I said, I didn't know who he was. So I Googled this guy, found out who he was. And I started to find stories of him doing this sort of thing to other people.
Right.
And this was 5 months ago. Nothing happened after that for 5 months. But to be honest, I did think to myself, should I do a video on the channel about this? And then I went, nah, it's negative. I'll just forget about it.
That's it. 5 months later. 5 months later. And let's circle back to that later on, by the way. That's a very important thing to say. So this incident occurred at an electric show. You and I were both there. He was taking everything out of context. He was trying to tell his story that he obviously had written, and God knows why the researchers hadn't actually done the minutia of actual research into this, to produce this story. And then at the very end, hilariously, you've got almost 300,000 subscribers. You've got millions of views, probably way more than Liam's ever had in his life, by the way.
It's about 200 million in 3.5 years. So, yeah, maybe it could be. Thank you for pointing that out, man. I appreciate it.
It is just one time embarrassing that he didn't know who you was, but the researchers obviously did their piece, and the way in which they finished the story was really poor. I thought, and can I just say, I'm going to leave a link to your rebuttal video below, because I think the way in which you actually retell the story using the footage through fair use is.
I'm going to try and get access to it, because they've obviously edited out the footage that tells the whole story. I'm going to try and get access to it, and to be honest, I'm considering. I'm been talking to lawyers about because I think that the abuse from all these crazies that they've brainwashed is just out of control. It's just coming from every angle. So Shanna's obviously been stressed out about it, and it's been bothering her. So sorry, mate, I interrupted you.
What I think came out of this, and I'm just going to share this, probably isn't showing very well for viewers, I don't know. But anyway, first up, can we all do everyone a favor? Don't go follow the links. I'm just going to share these screenshots. If you really must, try to do it incognito window, because anyway, we
don't want to reward them with clicks.
We don't want to. And I've done it today, unfortunately, and I feel bad for it already. I feel very dirty. Anyway.
you had to, right?
So they've premised this story about, that the EV Con spotlight investigating into the deadly side of electric vehicles sold in Australia. And of interest, and this was all the way through the story. And I'm not going to excuse for 1 second the really bad stories that came out of this place. They do not treat the workers very well. They are not treating the environment very well. And it is the most dirtiest way in which to produce nickel. Okay. And this plant they actually featuring, the nickel mine rather, is called the Morawali Industrial Park. And it produces, now remember this, grade 2 nickel. Okay, that is the laterite or dry nickel type that it takes a lot of energy to get it to be of any use for anything, but it can't be used for everything. In particular, it can't be used for electric vehicle batteries, which this show did not talk about. And more importantly, this mine is actually owned by one of the world's largest makers of, get this, stainless steel. So the Chinese owner, which they kept on going on and on about. And so it was this story, it was kind of like, what is this story about? Is it about electric vehicles, or is it about China, or is it about Indonesia? I don't know. But if you take that aside and you take away the main message because of the title of the story, and you think to yourself, okay, so this nickel mine produces nickel that goes into electric vehicles. No, it doesn't. It actually produces nickel for stainless steel that is actually then sent to China to be used.
So what you're saying is that mine is owned by a stainless steel company, and about 70% of all nickel is used worldwide for steel.
Yeah,
approximately.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Now, guys, can I just point out? This story, for people who are not from Australia, it's gone completely viral. It's been on almost every major news channel. It's had millions and millions of views. So there's a lot of people who have been tricked and lied to by this story. But I should point out one thing, because people will say this in the comments.
Yep.
Grade 2 nickel is sometimes used in various countries for batteries, but it does take a lot of refining and a lot of additional cost. So that's why it's usually used for steel, because they don't need to do all that extra refining for the steel manufacturing. But with batteries, it's better to get grade 1 nickel. And so generally batteries are from grade 1 nickel. However, as you said, this particular mine, which is what the story is about, because that's where 21 people died, is not used for batteries. And that's what I said in my video. This is not about you or I condoning things happening in Indonesia. We have, both of us do not agree in any way whatsoever with what's happening in Indonesia. I just want to make that clear, because we're going to get a lot of people commenting saying, it's about Indonesia. We don't agree with that. We don't support that. We want them to have the right these workers to not have this stuff happen to them, have the right rights there. But that's on the minds, and that's on the Indonesian government. We can't control that personally.
Exactly right. And just for those viewers who might be new to electric vehicles or curious, basically, fundamentally, 3 different types of electric vehicle batteries out there. And when electric vehicles first came up and up and up, so 2000s, 2010s, they are predominantly nickel, manganese, cobalt, or with aluminium. So there was definitely a lot of nickel in them. There was some cobalt in them, and there was some other sort of stuff in them, right? But, and I'm going to share my screen for a hot second, because again, this only took not even 1 hour of research, which makes you wonder about Channel 7's ability to do anything. If you actually look into where most batteries are manufactured these days and the type of batteries that they make, okay, the third type of battery that I own.
So this source is the IEA, the International Energy Agency.
Yep. So this is the International Energy Agency, and this was published this year, the 5th of March, 2025. Okay. So within the last 5 months when the video was shot. And this graph is very telling. Basically, it shows in the first section, China, European Union, and the rest of the world as a whole. And the green bit is the type of battery that they produce in these countries. And guess what China mostly makes? About 70, almost 80% of it is lithium phosphate, and that it does not have any nickel in it whatsoever. Okay. And then if they do have nickel, guess what? In 2024, the majority of it is high-grade nickel. High-grade nickel. So not the sort of stuff that comes out of this Indonesian plant. Okay. Look into the EU. There's a different story. There's definitely some low-grade nickel in those use. And then as the rest of the world, it makes up a tiny minority. That is to say, the actual nickel use. But the takeaway from this chart should be, notice how lithium phosphate batteries are actually growing in popularity. And that's because they're actually cheaper to manufacture, they are safer, and they're good for, well, more sort of long distance sort of traveling.
I should also mention out as well, the latest generation lithium iron phosphate batteries from China, from Geely, from various Cadel, from BYD, they're capable of charging between 600 to 900 kilowatt speed. So that's one advantage of lithium iron phosphate, and it's part of the reason why, not just cost, but also they're safer, they're cheaper to manufacture, and the new generation can charge much faster. So what that means is in China, the number of the lithium iron phosphate batteries, they're taking over the market. And it's not just, you showed 70%, which is 100 or more than 70% is LFP, meaning they don't use nickel, but that percentage is increasing every year.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And based upon some reports, and I'll leave a link to these below so you can go check out them if you like. Basically, the LFP market, the lithium phosphate battery that doesn't involve any nickel whatsoever, has actually tripled in its usage in the last 5 years. And it now makes up more than half of the EV global market type of battery being sold out there. And sure, there are still batteries being made out there that will contain nickel, but again, it's going to be grade 1 nickel. The good quality stuff, not the actual poor quality stuff that, is supposedly ending up in our cars in Australia. We get none of them. And
it's a good point, though. We should point that out, because Australia gets mostly cars made in China. So most of the EVs here, Tesla standard range, Model Y and Model 3 have lithium iron phosphate batteries. So more than 70% of the EVs coming to Australia use LFP batteries. And I think that percentage is rising, if anything.
Yeah, exactly. The main supply of nickel to the batteries that are in the other sort of that little minority now, they come either from, get this, and this is again an oversight by the Channel 7 story, by BHP Australia. That's one of the major sources of nickel provided to electric vehicle, to battery makers for Hyundai, for Kia, for Tesla. They come from Russia. They do not come from Indonesia. And it's that they completely admitted that bit. They went and interviewed an owner of another nickel mine who unfortunately was overlooked for Tesla contracts. So Tesla has contracts with BHP Australia. And maybe Kerry Stokes from Channel 7 is very sour that he hasn't got a stake in BHP. I don't know. Who knows his motives?
Yeah. But like you said, the timing that they waited 5 months until the election was 1 month away. And then they released not just that story, but there's also been another hit piece out about saying, have you seen that another hit piece talking about how the emissions from electric cars are actually worse than gasoline-powered cars, even though it was completely debunked years ago.
Oh, yeah.
This story has been reprinted again, brought up by the media again, and that timing is very obvious that it's come at the time of the election where they're obviously trying to favour one side of politics for very clear reasons. I think those reasons are slowing down renewables, slowing down electric cars. The Liberal Party, what do they just say, right? They're going to remove emission standards in Australia.
Yes, exactly. They don't want the efficiency standards here. And they would rather just keep selling to Australian people this lie that the car is actually clean and green and go hybrid. No, don't go hybrid, people. Don't go hybrid. And so, coming back to this story, that you can actually go read, and again, don't go give them a click. I'll share it here for you guys. Is that unlike in the actual video, they didn't talk about how they approached all the other car makers and they approached suppliers of batteries. So in the print media version, they actually said, hey, we reached out to all these different companies and all these different companies responded. And guess what? None of them used batteries from bloody Indonesia. Oh my gosh. How amazing is that?
None of them use nickel from Indonesia. Is that the case?
None of them use nickel from Indonesia.
Yeah.
There is talk in here about one visiting it because it used to be part of their supply chain, and now they've since moved on. Huh. Funny that. Funny that. So how come that didn't get in the video? Oh, geez, I wonder why. Because it didn't suit the narrative. It didn't suit the story.
Yeah.
And
one thing people also forget is they what we're saying now, they hear all this.
Yeah.
If they're anti-EV, it's very hard to have a logical conversation with them because it's like an emotional, it's like a religion for them to hate change, to hate EVs. It's all, you and I spoke before, and you mentioned earlier in this interview chat, you mentioned that emissions are hurting people, and people often forget. They say you're a bunch of green freaks because your global warming is a scam. They say it's a scam. Now, even if you think that's true, I don't really care. I've always mentioned this on the channel. We don't know what percentage of global warming is caused by humans. We really don't know. So my point is, and I've said this at least 500 times, people are sick of me saying it, is emissions are hurting you. Wherever you mine them. Okay, that's not hurting you. But then if you're burning them around your house, in your city, you're breathing in that air. And I think if you're actually stupid enough to think that breathing in the fumes from a diesel exhaust or a petrol gasoline exhaust is healthy for you, you should go sit in your car in your garage and see how that goes. Because that's really dumb, right? We know there's so much evidence now. I don't think anyone, even the full-on redneck, absolute nutters, the real super right wing guys, even they wouldn't argue that those exhaust fumes are not really bad for you, surely. So my point is to say, EVs don't necessarily, they're not necessarily going to answer every part of the solution, but they're part of the solution. And nickel and lithium, we do mine lithium, we do mine nickel, and people will say, you've got to mine all this, you're ruining the earth. But here's the point: all of this is recycled. It's worth a lot of money. So this claim that people say, right? They say we're just filling up landfill with these batteries and destroying the earth is insanity, because that's like basically having a massive gold bar and throwing it in the bin. Would you really do that?
No.
Black mass is worth $8,000 a ton. So if you just took an EV battery and just crunched it up and didn't even extract the metals properly, it's worth $8,000 a ton. If a battery weighs 600 kilograms, that's $4,000 That's $4,000 right there. Like $7,000 Australian dollars. So imagine how dumb you'd have to be to just throw it away. No one's throwing them away. All of it will be recycled. All of it is being recycled or will be. So what that means is we'll have a circular economy. By experts are saying by around 2050, we won't have to mine for any of these minerals ever again. Maybe they're saying between 2048 to 2055, we won't have to do any mining. So it's a completely circular economy. So I think for the people out there that think EVs are bad simply because we have to mine the minerals, we won't have to anymore. And that's what's great about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you bring up some very important points here, and that is around, like your wife's health and that of the health of our families and your family and your friends. there is nothing that's not without consequence.
Yeah.
And when we burn things, when we dig things up and we burn them, think about the amount of energy that goes into making petroleum, diesel, and how intensive and actually devastating it is to the environment. And the thing, though, that when we ultimately burn petrol or diesel to propellers in cars and vehicles, it's gone. It's gone. It becomes NOx. It becomes PM 2.5. It becomes stuff that goes in your lungs, does damage to them, your heart, your brain, and even more untold effects, which are demonstrable and actually have had a lot of science behind them, successful court cases behind them.
Yeah.
And people think that, oh, well, the EVs can't be any better. Well, it turns out they can. And when you have ethically sourced nickel from the likes of BHP, where there's a source chain and we can check every single step and ask employees, how are you? Are you okay? Are you being treated well? Do you have the proper safety equipment? Do they care about you? Yes, great. This is really disappointing that obviously this Indonesian plant is not treating its workers very well. But the point is that is a stainless steel production facility for China. For most likely, I don't know, a sieve in my kitchen right now. Yeah, but that's not overlooking great title by Channel 7 about the great EV con. It's not. It's not. And again, it's
if they actually cared, they could have said what it really was. It's a stainless steel problem, and that's clearly the issue. Like, if more than 70% of it's for stainless steel, we don't have to use stainless steel for a lot of things that we use it for. I mean, a fridge doesn't have to be covered in stainless steel. So we probably could reduce our global use of stainless steel by 20-30% if we actually considered that, okay, we're using nickel in that stainless steel. Do we really need it? Can we replace it with another metal? We could probably use aluminium. We can use something else. That, if they actually really did care about the environment, they would have recognized, okay, there is an issue here that we can solve, but that's not clickbaity, and that's not going to get the clicks, and they're not going to get the make them the money that they clearly get them the exposure they're clearly after, I think, or have the, I don't know, the influence on their politics that they're clearly after as well.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, look, I'll leave a link to your rebuttal video below. That's the one you should watch, guys. Please don't go click on the Channel 7 story. In fact, I will not leave. You can Google that yourself. You can Google the actual story where they've got the responses from the different car makers who chose to respond. It's again, thank you, Sam, for continuing to be an EV champion. Really do appreciate it. Well,
you actually have done more than a lot of people, because the media was using the EV tax and spreading this negative narrative around that story, and that was really gaining traction. And what you did kind of shut that up. It kind of shut up the government. It stopped that from happening. And I think, I mean, I personally have mentioned this publicly quite a few times, because for you to have to take the leap and actually do that was huge. So I mean, I got a lot of respect for you, and I think that equally people they need to go to your channel, subscribe to support the EV movement. So because you've done a lot for it, mate.
Yeah, thank you. I try. Yeah. And look, I think we're really fortunate, and we're looking at a technology that's still evolving, still in its early days. And we're all learning from what could be better, and we're improving things every damn day. And whenever people ask me about, oh, should I go electric? Is electric right for me? It's like, yes, it's an absolute no-brainer. And yourself and I, we're very fortunate to be able to jump in a lot of different electric vehicles and try out some awesome cars out there. And to be honest, I haven't really driven a bad EV yet. There's been some okay. Some okay. I will not mention names.
But you will on your channel, though. You'll mention them on your channel.
Oh yeah. It's hard to say sometimes, because you need to be very conscientious of it. You need to tell the viewers the actual truth, right? And you don't want to sugarcoat it. But sometimes you got to read between the lines, folks. Anyway, so what's the next car you'll be jumping into, Sam?
I'm going to China on Monday to test some Xpengs, X9, G9, hopefully the P7 Plus and the Mona. I'm not sure yet, because it's got to be in Hong Kong. But that's the next step, Monday. But I want to point out, I think we should talk about, you just said technology is moving fast, and we're still in the infancy stage, which is kind of true, really. I agree. But what's really cool is some of the changes we've seen in the last 6 months. So we're looking at the ability to charge your battery between 5 to 10 minutes from about 20 to 80%, or 10 to 80% even in some batteries. BYD obviously brought out that new tech, and 1,000 kilowatt charging. I think Zeekr is saying that they're capable of doing 900. The new Xpeng G6 will have around 500 kilowatt charging. This is Geely's new golden brick battery. I think that's about 600. So these lithium iron phosphate batteries, Cadel, they've got the condensed battery with ultra high energy density. The technology is remarkable. And I think that's why I love this job, because it's changing all the time. Whereas V8 engines, turbos, they're so boring now. Nothing changes. It's so boring. But in this sector, a lot of muscle car dudes have gotten in. A lot of guys who are like, I'm never going to be into EVs. They get an EV and they're like, wow, this thing's insane. And then they start seeing the changes in the technology, and just they sort of say, okay, hang on a minute. In 10 years' time, most people will be able to charge their cars in 10 minutes. There's going to be charging points everywhere. Why would you actually want a gasoline petrol powered vehicle? And this is exciting. This is actually really exciting.
Absolutely. It really is, isn't it? And I think that's a very good point there. Like, what was the guy's name? He did coal miners in cars. I haven't seen him for a while now, unfortunately. But he did that thing whereby he actually, like his brother was a coal miner, or family member was, and he started, he took his Model 3 Performance to various places around Australia, and he put him in it, and he said, floor it, go for it. And then you just saw these reactions come to their faces, and they're like, oh my gosh, okay, I get it now. Take my money.
Yeah.
And I think this is what electric vehicles provide. And sometimes it's hilarious when people say to me, oh, they're quite slow, aren't they? Oh geez, they're no good, are they? Oh, the batteries aren't going to last 2 years, aren't they? It's like, no. Actually very fast. Just jump in and then you floor it.
Speaking of batteries not lasting long.
Well, what's that about? I mean, for goodness sake, didn't BYD just increase the warranty up to now 8 years and more than 160,000 kilometers, something like that, which is a typical 10-year lifespan for most cars anyway.
Geely EX5 is unlimited kilometer warranty.
Unbelievable.
8 years.
Yeah.
The Xpeng G6 is 10 years. The battery warranties are going longer and longer because these companies are seeing that actually the batteries are usually outlasting the life of the car. So from what with the data we've seen from the older cars, particularly Teslas, we're seeing that they're on average actually getting closer to 400,000 plus kilometers on the first battery, even longer. There's many cars that have done even more than 600,000 kilometers on the one battery.
Yeah, and just to remind people, most Aussies only do about 12 to 15,000 kilometers per year. So you just said 25 to 30 years of driving. Yeah. Okay. Do you, the owner who has got a petrol car right now, have you still got a 25 to 30-year-old car in your driveway? If you do, well done. Good job. But most Aussies sell their car in 10 years or less, right? And so the battery thing is not a thing. It really isn't. And when it ranges, there's a whole lot of other stuff there. It really is.
There is. I should point out as well, something I just learned. I just spoke to an insurance company in Australia, and the lady said to me they work with electric cars. So the main ones in Australia, where if there is a fault with the battery, most batteries can be fixed, she said. She said often they can fix them. But if they decide not to, the average cost for that insurance company, they said, to replace the battery is lower than the cost to replace an engine.
Yeah.
Literally, she said it's $4,000. And people are saying it's $20,000, $30,000.
No.
So they're getting these batteries OEM straight from the factory, and they're way cheaper than they used to be. So even if you did have a car that was, say, 15 years old and you did want to replace the battery, it's not that expensive to do. It's actually quite cheap. Or you can fix them now. There are companies that can fix them. So there's this narrative there that Channel 7 are still promoting, and that the media are still promoting, that EV batteries will only last a short period of time. They're really expensive. Complete myths. It reminds me of cigarettes, when they used to just make these cigarettes ads and say how great it was for you. And it's sort of similarly stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think, subscribe to your channel, subscribe to me, go find some other great Australian electric vehicle content creators out there who are actually telling the truth about these, who are actually living with these cars. I thought about just the other week, I spend about a third of my year in anything but a Tesla right now. The other car we've got is an MG. It's electric as well. And It's great. And would I ever go back to petrol? God, no. No. Why would I? You seen the price of petrol today?
No, I'm sure it's not. I don't look at it anymore. When you
Yeah,
don't need to, you don't worry about it. It's
I
actually
drive
like
past.
removing an element of stress from your life.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. And we're fortunate we can do off-street parking, so we're on an electric vehicle plan. So between 11 and 2 o'clock today, we charge our car for free, and
Free.
overnight, yeah, for free. And between midnight and 6 a.m., it's only 8 cents per kilowatt hour. So basically, my fuel bill is either zero or $3 or $4 for a
Wow.
week.
What company is
Yeah.
that? What?
That's through OVO Energy. So they're the energy retailer, and
Yep.
that's their electric vehicle plan. And I do like it. I haven't got shares, I swear to goodness. They they can pay me. They can pay me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the deal with them is you have to estimate what your energy use will be across a year. So all you do is you look at your typical bill, say in summer, and you just times it by 12, and you say, I'm going to use this much energy per year. And then every month, your electricity bill is always the same. And right now, we're already about almost $800 in credit with these guys. We only pay $125 per month, and we're $800 in credit with them because we've got a
Wow.
battery out there. Yeah, we've got a battery, we've got solar. We don't use a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And we've got two electric cars.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's really cool. It's probably a big issue that we should talk about as well, that I wonder if there's obviously been some negative stories right now around Labor, but it's coincidental that they just unveiled that $2.3 billion home battery incentive.
Yeah, which is very good. Very
Did you
good.
want to explain that to people, what that's about?
Oh, mate. So basically, up to date, there's either been you can either get the solar or the battery incentive, right? So if you ever claim for your roof, and if you haven't, you need to do it. There's both normally a state and a national, federal rather, rebate to actually go get solar and or a battery. And the battery one has never been that generous. And now, what is it? 3,000, 5,000? I forget what the dollar amount is.
5,000. Yeah.
Yeah, so a substantial reduction in the actual price because the batteries at the moment are still really not worth it, but that makes it worth it.
With EV incentives, battery incentives in the States as well, meaning
Exactly.
it could be quite a bit more than that.
Yep, and that's it. Combine all the savings you can in the world, and I even today, especially with our very low selling rate with solar, you're mad to not get solar and a battery. And because solar is pretty cheap in Australia compared to what I understand our American friends pay for it, I don't know why you pay so much for it. It basically, I would recommend, because it's such a low feed-in tariff rate, that's the amount of money you get back by throwing energy into the market. Just get a battery if you can afford one, okay? Or better yet, get a vehicle that has potentially that vehicle to home load, vehicle to grid, anything like that, so that your big battery out there that's in your car can be used by your house. And we saw some great stories about that recently with the typhoons and what typhoons? What was it in the northern New South Wales, southern Queensland?
Cyclone?
Cyclone. It's a cyclone, wasn't it? Yeah. And people were actually using life-saving equipment, like keeping the dialysis machine going, using their car to power the home and the life-saving equipment.
Yeah.
And so getting any sort of battery, especially this new scheme that's come out, very good. So yeah, I'll leave a link to it below.
That's a good point. Vehicle to load, most electric cars have that. So when when the power goes out, if you don't have a home battery, or if your home battery after a few days the power's still out and maybe you run out of power, you can still use your electric car to power your fridge or a heater. It's just things that are absolutely essential, and that would last you probably a week just using minimum things. Really something where you're going to be saying to yourself, my neighbor doesn't have this. I kind of feel good that, you can see everyone else doesn't have it. And you might be able to help your neighbors if you're in that situation, I think, which is kind of a good situation to be in. We can help other people.
Yeah. For sure. Definitely. So, there's a lot of benefits of going electric, and, between the lifestyle changes you can make and also the benefits that your electric vehicle brings you, being able to go glamping, taking your TV with you because you can.
Yeah.
And providing, energy for your home in blackouts, through to helping out your neighbors. People also, I think there's a scheme out there, I forget what they're called. I'm reaching out to the guys at the moment because I like what they're doing. They're called WeVolt. It's kind of like plug share, whereby you offer up your charger on your home and you make it available for people to use at a small cost. So it might either going to cost, cover your costs, or maybe give you a little bit of money in your bank, which is lovely.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because that would mean that there would be access to potentially millions of chargers around Australia, with probably between 7 to 22 kilowatt charging speed, which would be insane. Imagine if you wanted to go in the outback of Australia. There's not going to be gas stations everywhere. There's not going to be fuel stations, but there could potentially be these chargers in thousands of locations. So I really like that idea.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's a good point to make, actually, that you can easily circumnavigate Australia. There's most electricity available everywhere. If there ain't, it's normally got solar, it's normally got a generator of some sort. And even if it was powered by dirty diesel, it's still going to be a lot better for the environment compared to what, and that's because of the conversion rate. Just electric vehicles are so good at turning the energy through those motors to propulsion. And
so
it's not
over 90%, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Compared to a petrol diesel thing, about 30-40% best case. Yeah. Anyway, just
right now, mate, what you test electric cars on your channel, what would we say your 3 favorite at this point? Putting you on the spot.
Oh, I hate you.
we can edit out any pause if you want to pause.
It's all good. It's all good. Look, okay. Next week I'm going to be jumping the new Tesla Model Y, so that'll be exciting. I believe it's supposed to be very good from preliminary reviews, and it looks to be. It definitely addresses a lot of issues I have in my Tesla Model Y. My Model Y is far from perfect, but that said, Tesla's got its electric sorted out. It's got its motors sorted out. It's got its app sorted out, and as much as I love and hate it, it has its interface sorted out. Yeah, so it's a good car to buy. Good car to buy. And I always take away that person who shall not be named. And I think that Tesla as a company and the people that make that car are very clever and should be supported. It's just unfortunate there's this guy who's just running around doing stuff that I don't like. Anyway, next one is, do I have all the money in the world here, mate? I do. Do I have all the money? Okay, cool.
Yeah. What about two that you would actually buy, and one that is just wins a lottery?
Oh, win the lottery. Okay, win the lottery. Yeah. You know what? BMW do make good electric cars.
You reckon?
They do. And the thing with that, right? They definitely suffer, except for some of the newer ones where they're actually built on a bespoke electric platform. They've compromised them by transforming what was a petrol diesel thing to electric. All right.
It just cut out a minute there. Could you just say that again?
You're right. So with the BMW vehicles, they typically take the electric, the petrol diesel platform, and they convert it to electric. But when it comes to pricing and features and actual build quality and the driving experience, they are a great car to drive. They've got everything thrown in them, from automatic self parking that you can do through your mobile phone. You get out, you do the remote thingy from.
My Xpeng does that. And it's cheaper. Anyway, sorry, mate.
Right?
So you've test driven a few BMWs, and you they're actually been pretty good in your experience.
Yeah, they're actually pretty good and price competitive, because unlike normal BMWs where it's kind of like, oh, you want tires? Okay, that's a fine option. Oh, you want an indicator? Oh, what BMW driver has an indicator anyway? So no, they fully load them. So you typically start up at the base level M2 level, and they've got all the smarts integrated into them already. And the app's good, the car is good, the build quality is good. They're just great cars, they really are. And I did like the Ioniq 5, but I feel that they've become a bit dated now. And I'm kind of curious to see what Hyundai's doing next. And I liked the Kia EV5, but God, it was thirsty. It was very thirsty. It was ridiculous. It had a bit of a slower charging speed, 140 kilowatts DC fast charge. That was disappointing. They didn't include the 800 volt architecture under the car, so it couldn't actually charge very, very fast like the other cars they make. But otherwise, very price competitive. So now with the lower spec Model Y that's coming out that you can buy now, because the launch edition's $67,000, and that's what I talked about in my review, by the way. I should have put an asterisk around that. The Kia EV5 undercuts that significantly. And sure, it's a very thirsty car, But I think for some buyers out there who only ever trust what they know, and they don't seem to want to go into, say, a Tesla for whatever reason that is, they want to go into a car that's got maybe a great warranty, has a dealership near them. They want that reassurance where something they're used to. And there's nothing wrong with going with Kia or Hyundai cars. And definitely I need to get into a bit more of those Chinese cars because they're making some good quality cars, some excellent quality cars, like amazing. What about you? What would be your top three?
So what about your the BMW is your
the big,
or go out and spend a bunch of money?
Yeah.
For me, the Kia EV5 is just my brain can't handle accepting or promoting or mentioning, because I just can't understand why the efficiency is so bad in comparison to my car and the Model Y.
Yep.
Using the same battery. So to be 20 to 30% less efficient than a Model Y with exactly the same battery in Germany, the BYD Blade battery. To me, it's an alarm bell saying, why the hell is that happening? So for me, I just write that one off. I think there's too many other options in that segment. If there was another options, and that was 3 years ago, I'd be saying this thing's great, but it's 3 years later. To me, it's 3 years old. I have to say, I love the Xpeng, the X9, because it's a van that's actually within a price range people can afford. They're meant to be around 90,000 Australian dollars, which is about 60,000 US. That's meant to be the starting price when they come to Australia, approximately. And there's just nothing else out there that size. It's bigger than a Kia. It's got more interior space than a Kia Carnival. It's actually much more efficient even than a Kia EV5, which is much smaller. I love the seats in the back that fold down into the floor. The electric seats that just fold completely flat into the floor. And I want a vehicle like that where the boys I can fit our bikes and surfboards in, and we can just not think about it. And then also they can bring their friends in the car. So it sort of appeals to me, that kind of a vehicle. I think, even though people don't like vans or MPVs, but I think it's a cool MPV. So that's one of my favorite. I think one car, if you're looking in America, that one car we don't have that I think is really, really impressive, and I'm not a big fan of the company, but the Lucid Gravity seems to be a really good car from what I've seen.
Good point. We don't have a lot of good American cars out here that we need.
No,
right?
We don't. The Lucid Gravity, I think, having that 450 kilowatt charging speed, it's a proper luxury car. That's probably the car they should have started with first, because the sedan market's dying. So hopefully that works for Lucid. We need some other EV companies in America to survive. So
Rivian. What's happening to Rivian?
Struggling at the moment, big time, aren't they?
Yeah,
I personally much prefer Rivian as a brand than Lucid, and many. I think the CEO is a good guy. I think he's intelligent, so I hope they succeed. But unfortunately, it looks like things aren't going well.
No.
Yeah,
it's a bit disappointing, because I got to say, of all the pickup trucks in America that you can buy right now, they're the most appealing ones to me.
Yeah.
Can I just do this for everyone for context? I'm going to put the Cybertruck right down here. In fact, if I can go low, I will.
I love the Cybertruck.
No.
If they come to Australia, man, I'll try and buy one.
No, don't do it. So it's a fridge. It's a bloody fridge on wheels. So I don't know. We were fortunate to jump into it in Sydney at the Everything Electric show, and it's big, it's ugly, it's got nothing redeeming about it. It's a big no from me, mate. And then you got the Rivians up here, and unfortunately, I think the price themselves in a place that they can't be. And that's a mistake I think actually Tesla's making right now. I was disappointed in the Robotaxi. They should have actually announced the Model 2 or whatever it was supposed to be. It should have been a 5-door small hatchback, an affordable electric car, that $25,000 car they're talking about, not a 2-seater thing that's predominantly designed for taxiing people around. You can just look at any market where, let's say, the most successful 2-seater ever was the Mazda MX-5, and that's only sold tens of thousands of units, across in Australia anyway, across the decades it's ever been on sale. Because what do people want? They want people movers, they want SUVs, they want a hatchback. They don't want a 2-seat car, and so that was a real misstep, I feel, by Tesla to actually go down the cyber taxi route at the moment. Sure, there's going to be a market for that in the future, but make it My Model Y, allow all the owners to get our cars onto the network, and Tesla can take a cut of that like they do Uber does with its drivers, right? Anyway.
Have you seen some of the latest videos of full self-driving
From America?
in the United States? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very impressive.
How far away do you think it would be from being commercialized?
I'll do the joke. 2 weeks. Anyway, sorry. No, I have no clue, because there was the last mention was supposedly Q1, Q2 this year in Australia, and
in Australia, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, no. So there was briefly mentioned, I think it was by Elon, late last year on X, and I don't like mentioning him at the moment, by the way. And then there was a brief heartbeat on the Australian website where it was actually on there for like not even a day, not available, but they changed the language around it and the way it was displayed. And then when people went back to do a double take, it was back to the usual. And
I should clarify what you're saying, though. Not getting full self-driving approved by the government, but Tesla vehicles being able to use that feature in Australia.
Yeah. So supervised FSD.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so that was supposed to Q1, Q2 this year, but here we are. And I still don't think. I think it's a few more years. The if anything, right now, unfortunately,
that would be the Australian government, though, wouldn't it? Actually approving it.
Well, if we go with the supervised version, I think it is fine. Basically,
okay.
You still need to actually be doing the interventions and being available, yada yada.
Yeah.
I think it probably meets the test. But looking into what Tesla's trying to achieve now by going unsupervised, they're slating for Texas, ASAP. And so if I was a company, I'd be throwing all my resources to do demonstration proof of concept, which will have a better market value, will increase shareholder value, is going to make people sit up and really pay attention, because right now, to most of the world outside of America, it seems like a bit of a distant, it's never going to happen, is it? And if they could demonstrate it can and actually is very possible, that's them. People around the world will go, oh, geez, I better actually purchase it now just in case, right? Because you've seen the videos where they some guys actually drove through a fake, coyote wall, testing out Tesla Vision, and it turns out hardware 3 versus hardware 4, there's actually a difference. You see the videos, and I think Tesla's got a bit of a liability on its hands, where some people who've got 2019 Tesla Model 3s, and I know some friends who do, if they're keeping their cars, they're going to have their cameras and their computers changed over.
Musk did say that, didn't he, that they would do that?
They would, and they'll honor it, but that's a real issue. That's a big issue. All right. And so it won't surprise me that actually when they do successfully demonstrate proof of concept in Texas with unsupervised FSD, and then they start rolling it out in China, which maybe is supposedly next, or maybe in Europe, which is supposedly next, and Australia's down that pecking order. So who the hell knows? I mean, when do you think it will be?
Well, I think they will get approved in one state in America this year, based on the videos that I've been watching. I've watched probably 50 of them, and I think it's definitely safer than a human now, from what I'm seeing on average in the last month. I think that they will get approved this year, but before, I'm not saying it'll be next week, but some point in one state, not necessarily elsewhere. I think what'll happen is other states. What will happen is they'll get the data from the following, say, 6 months, 12 months from that state. Could be Texas, like you say. They'll be able to say, okay, it's involved in less crashes than humans are. Statistically, it's 50% safer. I'm not saying it's going to be never involved in a crash. It's impossible. I think they'll be able to say that. And then I think probably approximately 6 to 12 months after that, they'll be able to use that data to say, okay, in California, other states where maybe their regulations, maybe not California, but other states will say, okay, it is safer. We'll start approving it. And it'll just have that gradual, and then Tesla will say, okay, we've got enough data now. We've got cars in this state, this state, this state. And I think probably within 2 years, it'll be approved all across the United States. But the rest of the world, completely different story. I think that's a complete unknown. And I don't think anyone knows, because that's regulations in that country. That's different data, different traffic signs, drivers doing different things. I think they're years and years away from the rest of the world. But the main focus for me, the United States is still a massive market. I still think Tesla can make a lot of money from America. I think approval for once, this would be my guess, approval for one state this year. Next year, they might get a few more states. And then by the end of that next year, they might get approval everywhere because I'll be able to see, all right, it is safer than other humans and it's about safety. So therefore, we'll approve it. And then eventually, they'll ban human drivers. That's what I think. I think probably 30 years from now, most Western countries will ban human drivers. That's my guess. It's not what I want, but I think it'll happen.
Yeah, because I don't know about you, I like driving.
Me too.
but I admit I make mistakes, and we all make mistakes.
Exactly.
Whereas computers, for the most part, they're dealing with an imperfect world, but they're also dealing in a perfect code, hopefully. And so for them, it's black and white. It's not I think this is what's going to happen. No, if there's actually a lot more certainty out there where a computer and another computer, maybe even having a conversation, I don't know, does it need to happen? But probably not. But they're all obeying the road rules, actually. But you're right, it would be safer to actually take the human out of the equation.
I'm sure you, like I, have seen so many drunk drivers, people going through red lights. There's often madness. I mean, the other day, I think I mentioned on the channel that I went to go through a roundabout and a car was going to T-bone he came through the roundabout at 60 kilometers an hour, would have killed one of my kids if I hadn't have seen it and stopped. So that's the kind of thing where I think, do I want that guy driving? No. Do I want to drive myself? I do want to drive, but if it has to be this way, then that's probably a better solution to prevent those. And the other thing is, mate, there is like 90-year-olds driving. And they shouldn't be driving a lot of, not all, some of them are fine, but some of them shouldn't be driving. And it is not a situation. Eventually, what is there, 1.4 million traffic deaths every year, I think, worldwide.
Really?
You could cut that down by 1 million by having cars that have, this better driving. It'll take a long time, but I think that's where we're heading.
Exactly. And ideally, and this is what I like to see, it's a good point you make there, is that if we have these cars that can drive themselves, then it means my parents will still have mobility and can get around. And that they're not then feeling isolated, and because they've got poor health and they can't walk to the shop or they can't ride, they are reliant upon their car. So their car can drive them to the supermarket, drive them, whatever. That's great. And so I agree. I can't
kids as well. My kids, I find it really hard because if they've got the sport on and they're meant to be at different places at the same time. I can't get them. It's really hard for me to get them there. And sometimes I just have to say, sorry, buddy, you can't do that because that's on at the same time. This would solve that. For single parents especially, solve it where you can get both of your kids to different sports and that it's going to be fine and they can get there and come back. I think that'd be cool. There's going to be heaps of stuff that'd be cool.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious on your perspective, because you've been able to drive, I think, over in China. A lot of the that have got realistically level 4 autonomy right now. That means to say you can even not pay attention, right? You can take your hands off. You don't need to look. You can actually use your mobile phone legally and the car will drive you. Is that correct?
It's correct. I'm not confident I would do that in any Chinese car right now. Now, I'm confident that the software is good, but I think Tesla's full self-driving software in America, in the United States, is leading. I know there's a lot of people who argue against that, but I think mostly they're coming from an emotional position of hating Tesla right now. But me, I don't really have a dog in the fight. I'm not invested in Tesla. I'm not invested in any Chinese companies like I used to be. I'm just looking at it objectively. I do think Tesla's globally leading. If you just want to rank them, who's number one, it would be Tesla in America, not Tesla out of America or in China. And then I think second to them would be some of these other collaborations in China that you're seeing, which are very good. Now, I'm not saying they're not good. They're very, very good, but there's no way that I would not be looking and just going to sleep or anything like that. No, not yet. Not yet. I think in a couple of years, absolutely, they're moving fast. I think in a couple of years, they will be able to. But getting those features approved, it'll be the same. Getting them approved outside of China will take a long time, like I think it will for Tesla. So I think in China, we're going to see within 3 or 4 years' time, there will be a lot of cars using that software. However, if you're looking at, say, BYD, I think you made this point on a video I watched about the God's Eye, which sounds great, but the God's Eye full version is only on their super $200,000 luxury cars. Right. So God's Eye B is on the mid-spec cars, and God's Eye C is on all the cars we can get. So I think it's going to be quite a while before we see that happen for the average BYD car, maybe 5 or 10 years. But that collaboration on the top level, I think BYD could quickly get up there. And that's another advantage that they'll have over their rivals, Toyota. of being the biggest car company in the world. Toyota have nothing in that area. Full self-driving software, they're just way behind. If you actually think about BYD's collaboration on that full self-driving, and then you look at their 1,000 kilowatt charging, and then you look at their battery advantage and their economies of scale advantage. I mean, I don't see how anyone in their right mind could think that Toyota has any top car company can compete against that. I'm talking legacy automakers.
Yeah.
I think if you're invested in one of those other car companies, you're going to lose a lot of money. It's going to be massive blood losses. Just
I'm curious actually what their savings are like in those, particularly the Japanese car makers. Do they even have the money to be able to pivot to electric, because they're ignoring it at their own peril? And they're going to have a very expensive catch up, and it'll be too late, I think.
As we know, Nissan does not have the money. Obviously,
they've been gobbled up, aren't they?
Nissan have all their debts rated at junk. So if they want to go out and try and get some money, it's going to be very hard for them to raise funds at this point. They say they can't pay their latest debt bond bill, which is $7.5 billion. So like you said, Nissan, no. Mazda, a very small company, and obviously they'll be massively affected by 25% tariffs because America is their most important country in the world. They're selling less than, 1 million cars a year. Subaru, 800,000 car sales a year. Obviously, they don't have the money. Toyota, they're the ones you'd be saying they do, right? But they also have $200 billion of debt.
Wow.
So if you could try and pivot, but then what are you going to add to that? Another 100 billion of debt? If you're the bank, are you comfortable giving that to a company that makes 1% of their cars are electric at this point in time?
Yeah.
I mean, some banks are already saying they won't give out loans to consumers for non-EVs. I mean, some banks are saying, so I think that's moving into the big investment world, where the banks are being more objective. There's less emotion from the banks. They're looking at the numbers and the data, where the trends. Okay, this year, global sales of EVs are up 30%. Where's the data heading? If a company is wanting to say, we want to invest, $500 million in an engine plant, pretty good chance the bank's going to go, yeah, no, we're not interested in that, mate. So I think Toyota is going to have to go back to get financing, and they're going to say, okay, we want all this money, and the bank's going to say, well, you've got $200 billion on your balance sheet minus, and then Toyota's going to say, yeah, but we have this is what they do. They say, yeah, but we have a $300 billion worth of factories. That's what they actually put on their quarterly statements. They say all of our assets are this much, but then the reality is, look what happens. Look what Hyundai did, right? Hyundai builds their car factory in China, cost them $1.4 billion. They didn't, basically, obviously they flopped in China, didn't really work. So they tried to sell the factory 2 years later, and they sold it for, what was it, 200 million?
Wow.
So they lost $1 billion on a brand new factory. So these factories are not worth anywhere near what these companies are saying they're worth. Their book assets are way below what they say. That's a big risk, where they're going to have to do what General Motors has did last year. They revalued all their assets in China and had to write them down by $5 billion. So that's what they'll have to do. Toyota will have to do the same thing. So they won't be in the same position they're in. So yeah, I don't think they can do it. Well, your point is to say they think overnight they can start making millions of EVs if people want them. But I don't think they have the capacity.
They don't. And I think, I remember watching the story about, I think it's a documentary, I doubt I can find it now, on the history of Tesla when they, Elon came in, 2007, 2006, when the Roadster was getting, being made, and they were using the Lotus back. And they were fortunate to be able to buy over in Fremont an ex-factory that was, abandoned, well, not abandoned, was sold off at a great loss to the company. But it then cost Tesla a lot of money to convert that to an electric line. And it's significant. You need to remove all the existing, tooling, all the machinery, everything needs to go, and you start afresh.
And they often have holes in the floor as well. They're like cut out of the concrete. It's not just like moving the machinery. You've got to do structural changes as well. Yeah. And they got that factory for, what was it, like 10% of the cost that it would have been to build it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that I think Tesla at the time did integrate where possible some of the existing robots for the welding and things like that, and some of the frames and the old then Roadster and then the Model S. But then they decided, you know what, we're wasting our money here. It's better actually we either go do our stamp press stuff, or let's actually get dedicated new lines in to build it, because we're wasting time and energy here.
Yep.
And that's the lesson. And I think the last plant that like Tesla built between Shanghai and Berlin, they cost them billions of dollars to get those. And sure, the shell is expensive. I understand that. I get that. But the is actually what goes inside it. And this is what this Toyota needs to do. And it's going to take a lot of moolah and a lot of time.
It is. And I think it's important to point out to anyone out there, you and I are not saying we love China, we love Chinese electric cars. Yeah. And people think that that's what's happening. We're actually just pointing out what's happening. It's like being a journalist is to point out what's happening globally. It doesn't mean you support that. It just means that China is taking over the global automotive industry because they've invested so heavily into new technology, into new battery technology, into cars, and it's simply happening. The question is, how can we try to stop that? We don't want, and I've said this so many times, we don't want one country to own the means of production for such an important product, the automotive industry.
Yeah. And that's probably a great segue back to the original story here, is that in Australia, we can make electric batteries. We have, I believe, 9 out of 10 of the elements needed to make EV batteries. So why don't we...
Here in Australia.
Yeah, here in Australia. And we're the largest supply of everything needed. And Tesla buys stuff from us in Australia. Yeah. Why aren't we making the batteries here, for goodness sake? There's talk about over in WA about a service facility over there for batteries, without the reconditioning, basically. Recently in South Australia, same, 100 jobs there. But no, let's think bigger. Let's get industry involved in that. And can I just pick up on a point you made before, probably an important one? I have no Tesla shares. I support the mission and what the people in it. And anyway. And
what you said before, Robin Denholm, the chairman of Tesla, she's been begging the Australian economy, Australian business, and the Australian public and the government to invest in exactly what you said. She's saying, we have these raw materials here. We should be at least refining them in this country, and we're losing that. We're setting them out at the very raw, unprocessed point. We're losing the ability to add value. Yep. Even if we didn't make batteries, there is still a lot of other opportunities that we could be taking advantage of. And it's important to point out, people still think the reason we can't do this in Australia is because wages are so high. And that is a good point. It's a really good point. But they forget the fact that in China, and not just China, but other countries now, many factories don't even have the lights turned on. They don't have the lights on. They're just running on robotics. Now, what I mean is to say, you don't need as many people in the factory as what you used to. So it's not as big of a handicap. You might need, say, have robots producing products, and we're seeing robots working on automotive industry production lines, and that's happening very, very quickly. So I think actually Australia is in a position to do what you said, because now we don't need to have 500,000 staff at a factory or 50,000. You can reduce that down and have a lot of automation going on. Plus, we do have one advantage, and that is we have a lot of sun. And obviously, solar and batteries is the cheapest form of energy worldwide, especially if you have access to constant sun like Australia does. Yeah. So electricity for many businesses is their number one cost, especially manufacturing. So we have this thing where automation is in place. We don't have to worry so much about having to hire all these people. Plus, we have access to the cheapest form of energy. Like you said before, solar is way cheaper in Australia than it is in the United States. So I agree. I 100% agree with you. It's totally logical.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's Robin Denholm, and she's obviously a very intelligent lady.
Yeah, and she's Australian. Go us. Yeah. The chairwoman of Tesla, for goodness sake. She's an Aussie. So good on her for advocating and hopefully doing a little bit of the shenanigans, the old razzle dazzle you need to do Australian politicians here. So anyway, all right. Well, Sam, just want to thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with me here, and do appreciate it. Again, links to everything we talked about today are down below, along with links to Sam's channel, the GoFundMe channel for Shannon, and Sam, over to you, mate. What do you want to say?
Thanks for having me, and it's been a real pleasure to see you again. Every time I see you, I I come away feeling good. You're a really positive guy, and that's what we need in the industry. We do need. It's true that we need positivity, and you're certainly really positive. You're driving it forward, and mate, it's always a real pleasure to see you and to talk to you. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Sam, and yeah, everyone, subscribe to Sam, subscribe to me, and vice versa, however that might look to wherever you see this video. And yeah, thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
Have a good weekend, mate.
Cheers.
See you.